Paul Brunton explains the world's perennial wisdom. The Birth of the Universe. Video Series 4, Video number 11. Presented by the Paul Brunton Philosophic Foundation. When did the world begin? Whence did it come? How did it arise? The cosmology of the hidden teaching begins its answers to these questions by explaining that the universe is an endless affair. There is no moment at which it has not existed, either latently or actively, and consequently there will be no moment when it will not continue to exist, either latently or actively. This is because the world does not arise by a sudden act of creation, but by a gradual process of manifestation. For being a vast thought and not a vast thing, it is brought into being by the world mind out of itself, out of its own mental substance, and not out of any extraneous stuff as matter is supposed to be by materialists. According to Max Planck, a founder of quantum theory, all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. The universe is eternal because the stuff to which we can ultimately trace it is nothing else than mind, to which there is no conceivable beginning and no conceivable end. Mind is what it has been since the beginningless, incalculable past. As Buddha said, unborn, uncreated, unoriginated. There is no first moment for it. Mind embraces all things, but is itself embraced by none. Hence, mentalism teaches that the universe has the same origin as any idea, that is, in and for a mind. Therefore, the correct way to see it is as being similar to the relation between any human idea and the mind in which it is begotten. The world mind does not need to create the universe out of nothing, when it can bring it to birth out of its own self. And as a mental principle, it does this by projecting the world as its idea. The world is its self-projection. All is formed according to the world idea, shaped and permeated by its expression of the divine will. All things which exist and all events which happen fulfill the world idea and are necessary to it. The universe has arisen out of its constructive meditation, but it has arisen in orderly, self-determined fashion, shaped by its own memorized mental impressions of a former state of active existence. The ceaseless procession of images, picturing forth suns and stars, lands and seas, and all things visible, emanate from the world mind under a divine, immutable, mysterious karmic law, like water trickling from an inexhaustible fountain. P.B. elsewhere refers to this world mind activity as light, energy, or vibration. The birth of individuals. Just as innumerable stored-up thoughts coexist in the depths of the individual mind, although they emerge into consciousness one at a time, so innumerable stored-up individual minds from previous universes coexist in the depths of world mind and emerge after the dawn of cosmic manifestation into different kinds of consciousness. The individual and the world rise together at the same moment out of the past, which trails behind them both. Every individual existence is thus the summary of innumerable earlier existences. As Max Planck points out, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. Consciousness is simply what seems to be internal to thoughts. But the material world is really the form which consciousness takes when it projects itself through the five senses and holds its ideas as something other than itself. The world which seems presented from outside to the senses is actually projected from within by the mind. Thus, the doctrine of mentalism finds its justification. Although the world-mind manifests both the individual and world together at the same moment, the individual is the center around which the world revolves. This is partly because it is only when the world image is felt to be his own conscious experience that it can assume any reality for him, and partly because he is able to call himself I and exist as a separated self only through the setting up of an objective environment. The overself, our higher self, has a special existence of its own and is the hidden meeting point of the world mind with each conscious being. The world mind, through its intermediary, the overself, affects the personality. The karmic forces become active within the heart center and there break into space-time existence. To bring the karmic impression of a thing into actualized being, the mind has to provide it with relations of extension, size, distance, and direction, and thus make space along with it. Thought forms of everything projected by the world mind so appear as to be outside the thought form of the body, and therefore they all coexist in space as the whole system, which we call nature. The body itself is a special thought formation which rests apart from all others and yet still remains mental. Quotes were taken from The Wisdom of the Overself and the Notebooks of Paul Brunton, Volume 16, Enlightened Mind, Divine Mind. Paul Brunton, 1898 to 1981, a best-selling British author of a dozen books, spent much of his early life researching the original sacred teachings of Western and Eastern spiritual traditions. He traveled the world to discover and communicate with Christian, Kabbalistic, Vedantic, Buddhist, Taoist, indigenous, and Sufi masters. Blending the richness of his own spiritual experience and inquiry with these ancient and contemporary teachings, he developed a philosophy and path of practice that suits life in the 21st century, one that expresses the greatest wisdom and love available to humankind. Regardless of how it is named, we each have a divine soul, an overself or higher self, that is with us here and now, waiting to be realized. Paul Brunton's writings are a source of deep spiritual guidance for all those interested in living a divinely inspired life.